Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 15 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together and seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. Hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. So today we'll be reading from chapter 6, the Livestock, from verses 139 to 142. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. وقالوا ما في بطون هذه الأنعام خالصة لذكورنا ومحرم على أزواجنا وإن يكن ميتة فهم فيه شركاء سيجزيهم وصفهم إنه حكيم عليم. And they say what lies in the wombs of these animals is exclusively for our males and prohibited to our wives. But if it is stillborn, they can share in it. He will surely punish them for their allegation. He is wise and knowing. قد خسر الذين قتلوا أولادهم سفها بغير علم وحرموا ما رزقهم الله افتراء على الله قد ضلوا وما كانوا مهتدين. Lost are those who kill their children foolishly with no basis in knowledge and forbid what God has provided for them. Innovations about God. They have gone astray, they are not guided. وهو الذي أنشأ جنات معروشات وغير معروشات والنخل والزرع مختلفا أكله والزيتون والرمان متشابها وغير متشابه كل من ثمره إذا أثمر وآتوا حقه يوم حصاده ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. It is he who produced gardens both cultivated and wild and date palms and crops of diverse tastes and olives and pomegranates similar and dissimilar. Eat of its fruit when it yields, and give its due on the day of its harvest. And do not waste. He does not love the wasteful. ومن الأنعام حمولة وفرشا كلوا مما رزقكم الله ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. Among the livestock are some for transportation and some for clothing. Eat of what God has provided for you, and do not follow the footsteps of Satan. He is to you an outright enemy. Now, one of the recurrent themes in this chapter is about the praise of God. As God, in the later verses that we read, He's telling us about these amazing, diverse blessings that He has given us, many blessings for us to count. He showed us all the fruits that were presented to us and how they grow and how they have their different interactions and they have their different nutrients for us. And for us, when we're eating them, to realize on how much God has given us those blessings. And then at the same time, He's reminding us about the cattle and how He has subjugated them for us, and so that we are capable of eating much of what God has given us. In these things, it's a simple way of approaching and realizing that we are taking it for granted, but this is because of God's permission. This is because of God's programming and God's mercy and blessings upon us. There's so much for us to remember, and God is also ending these verses that we're reading, in that these animals also provide us clothing and transportation. So God has talked about food, God has talked about transportation, God has talked about clothing. And He is showing us that these necessities that is for everyone, and it is a necessity for everyone, that He is providing it for us in such an easy and a manageable way for our Lord, and for us to be able to actually go through with what we need to go through in a meaningful way, where it is, again, provided for us out of the necessity that we needed. So the people who do strive to get more clothes and more food and more crops and more of the blessings that God has given us, they usually have to start to overinvest in the world in a way where they're just more worried about what they're getting right here, right now, rather than understanding that these blessings is for us to finish a mission. Whatever our purposes are, for us to take care of the responsibility that God has given us. And this freedom of choice and freedom of decision, we clearly have to make this world a better place for us and for our people around us. Now, it is easier for me to feed people with all these tools that God has given me, and for me to simply just gather the food that God is simply creating from the earth that's in front of me, or for me to learn from my God and cultivate the food myself. But one thing that we realize is these disbelievers, that they have no problem killing their children, and for them to associate to God what God has not as authorized for it to be associated, and then take these blessings that God has given us and start to dedicate it to other than God, we see that these people start to seem very arrogant, and not only arrogant, they're very selfish. So you could see here, they, in their own religion, they start to come up with lies in where that they start to say that these blessings that God has given them is some as for their for their males, their born sons or their sons, and it's forbidden on their women and their wives. You can see here now they're making a clear distinction that the male is better than the female, but they take it in a way where they look down on the female. And they're saying that this is part of their religion and they're prohibiting things to their wives. Now, the thing that is interesting is that when the meat is proven to be useless, in their case, a stillborn, then they don't have a problem with their wives eating from it. So this type of mentality is going to destroy your society because you're raising your daughters to always think that they're second-class citizens, that there's ladies, these girls, they don't have a meaningful place in society. And the society is going to grow up in a way that is not going to be the best for humanity because it's going against what God has given us, especially these spouses that we have, that we should be living for them, as God will tell us in a different chapter. But yet here they are using them as a way to abuse them, and they're, as I said, second-class citizen. So in a society like that, the girls are not feeling the way that they should be feeling, and the society starts to hinder and suffer. This is all stemming back to the concept of them coming up with their own religions, following their whims and desires, dedicating things to other than God, and at the same time, then they're splitting it as they please. Oh, well, part of our religion, these cattle is just for us and our sons, and it's not permissible for our daughters. God is telling us that they will surely get punished for that. So we've mentioned how the punishment starts in the worldly life, and on the day of judgment as well, they're going to be in severe punishment on the way that they treated their own daughters and their own people, and on how they've started to become criminal in what they did with God's blessings. Now God is telling us they have lost, they're done. Those that have killed their kids just because they thought that this is what the religion is teaching them. We have ideas where because of people thinking that dominance works in a certain way, in the Quran there was men that would bury their daughters alive just simply because it was a shame for them to have daughters. Now imagine growing up in that environment as a girl. These are things where the society will start to hinder and you're going to lose because you're just not growing one of the most essential things for a successful society in a meaningful way. And it's these women that God has given us, because these women are, if they are in a healthy mind state and they feel valued and they feel loved, they would produce a good seed. But if I'm abusing these women and I'm giving them a rough time, their body and their stress and their levels and whatever they're enduring is going to affect these children that are in their wombs, and therefore the child is going to come out with problems. They say that it's genetics and they say all these certain things that they approach with science, but I truly believe that that time of incubation, let's say inside the womb of a mother, it's very important how she's thinking, what she's feeling, and what she's eating. So God is telling us that these people are forbidding what God has allowed for their children. So they're either killing them or they're stopping them from whatever God is giving them as blessings because they just want to take control. It is very important for them to stay in control, and they even use a religion as a means for them to stay in control and for them to have the power, because the religion is there to support them rather than to teach them what they need to do. So it is very difficult for that type of person to hear the word no, that you can't do that. For them, they will twist the religion and they will play all sorts of games just so that they would do what they want. So if this child is not someone that they think is going to be raised in a way that is meaningful for them, they have no problem killing them, thinking that that's what God is ordering to do. And the thing that is very clear in regards to all the blessings that God has given us, God has repeatedly told us in the Quran to give from what God has already provided for us. Even when we are going in the wild and we're realizing that we're getting somewhat of a profit of things that God has already cultivated, that the day we harvest it is the day that is due. Now, this can be translated to many things, because as God says that He has struck in this Quran an example for all things for mankind. And the thing that we realize that when it comes down to the harvest and the crops, that the day you harvest is the day that you're supposed to give away. So the day that you profit and you're going to start to use this profit, this is the day that you're supposed to give away. So it's not supposed to be in a concept where you save it up and once a year and you just pay with whatever you believe that it's a profit, as if it's like a filing your tax as they do in certain Western countries, where once a year you just file the taxes that is owed to you for the day before. but rather the way that we are supposed to approach our zakat or our purifications in regards to giving from what God has given us, we're supposed to do it on the day that we've received the profit. Now, the reason why I'm saying that it's profit is because God is saying this is the harvest. At this point, when it comes down to the crops, this is your profit. Whatever overhead you had is like you growing these trees and putting whatever you did, and it's not something that is going to be gained back by money. So you're gained back by these fruits, and these fruits you could sell, or these fruits you could eat. So however it is being done, whenever you are receiving this income, you have to be able to give it in the way that God has ordered us to give. And yes, the more you give, the better you're going to find. The more good you do, the more good you will find with your Lord. But at the same time, God told us not to be extending our arms when we are helping people, nor to leave our arms locked to our neck, and therefore not giving from what God has given us. Now, the thing that is also very important, that God does not love the wasteful. Now, notice how when it came down to the concept of harvest, that is when God has also ended that verse with the concept of him not loving the wasteful. So we have all this fruit and all this abundance and amazing blessings. And God is clearly telling us that just because it's a lot in the way that you perceive it for some people, it does not give you the right now for you to just go through it and just eat it and throw it away, eat half of it and just waste a big portion of it. And this is something where I believe is going to translate to our lifestyle in paradise, where we're going to have such an amazing abundance, but we're going to be able to use this abundance in a way where it is not wasteful, where it's not extravagant, where we are sticking to this test that God has given us, and we're proving to ourselves that yes, we can do it. So remember, when it comes down to even ordering food, many of us are guilty of this, where we over order, and we might not consider that the other people in the room, at this moment, is a type of a harvest. So we should be able to give to people even if we're eating by ourselves. So if you are in public and you're eating, make sure you try to offer to people around you. I know to a lot of people that might sound weird, or because it's something that our society doesn't accept. But the thing is, you're always going to bring joy to the person next to you, even if they're not hungry, even if they don't want to take any. Because just simply them being offered, it does bring this sense of joy. And especially if you see somebody that is fitting the role of someone that you are allowed to give to in regards to what is called the sadaqah, or like you confirming your faith by giving what God has given you, or through the concepts of zakat, which is the purification. When you are giving your money and there are those people that qualify for either of them, then you should be utilizing that time and that effort for you to fulfill your duties that God has ordered you to do. Now, remember that these people, the individuals earlier, they approached the matter for in regards to how they want to deal for themselves. And God here is a different type of approach, which is the complete opposite of what those people do, where God is showing us as him as a deity, the only deity. He's completely selfless. So if your deity, the one that you worship aside from God, is very selfish, and it's always about them and how to sacrifice for them and what they want and giving them, it does not seem that that's a God that you want to serve, simply because here you're serving their needs. While when we are worshiping and serving God and submitting to his will, it's still helping us and it's improving the life of the human for all the humans around that are believers. But yet, God is the only one who's accepting the consciousness of it, and he's giving it back to us in a meaningful way. So we're achieving an amazing result, which the other side seems like they were just mimicking God's system, and so that they would steal it and make it about themselves. And at the end of the day, whatever they're worshiping as idols, as God tells us, they're just devils, or they're just jinns or demons. Now, we have to recognize here that God is talking about consumption, and then all of a sudden, he starts to talk about do not follow the footsteps of the devil. Now, earlier in the chapter, we were talking about how it's idolatry to listen to the devil or to obey to the devil. It's not listening, obeying the devil. God calls us that we would become idolaters, mushriks, if we do engage with what the devil is telling us. But this is also after God mentioned to us about do not eat where the name of God was not mentioned on. And here again, God is telling us about us eating from what God has given us and do not follow the steps of the devil. Because if we start to follow the steps of the devil, now we recognize that this is like this is essentially a form of shirk, and it's usually has to do with consumption. Now, consumption is you using from whatever God has blessed you with. Let's go with that definition. So we'll see that the devil is always trying to get to you with the food that you're eating, the food that you're consuming, but at the same time with the women and your wives and the relationships that you have with your wife. Because over there he could do a lot of work and try to break that relationship. He's pushing you to maybe go to another girl that is not your wife, and he's trying to push you to have some relations with this woman which is not allowed for you to have, simply because you are now enticed to do so. The devil called you and you answered him. So these are things that where we have to avoid them, because God is telling us he's a clear enemy. But notice again, he's trying to aim at whatever you're consuming in regards to what you're doing from your day to day. But for us to truly be saved and realize on how to avoid this clear enemy is for us to dive into the book of God the way God wants us to keep diving into it and pondering about it. So when we are presented with situation, we remember the story and the lesson that was presented to us for us to make the most efficient and best decision. Now, when it comes down to our food, there's an abundance amount of food, and there's an abundance amount of blessings that God has clearly shown us. And it's not just including the land and the crops and the birds, but this is also including the sea and what the sea holds, which is also extremely very vast. But in our blessings and what God has promised us, we also have to remember our hereafter and give from what God has given us, because it's our duty. And this is just a simple taste of what can come on the day of judgment if you make it to heaven. But at the same time, it is also a taste that if you do go to hell, that it is because of the decisions that you made. Now, heaven is much more than what we have here. But there is a similarity in what God is showing us in regards to what fruits and whatnot we're having. And at the same time, it is whatever we're desiring internally. So these are concepts that we have to keep reminding ourselves. Look at how much God has given us as a blessing, and then the day of judgment is coming. So we should be able to use these blessings in a way where we're serving God and not serving the devil, because the devil is always trying to pull you into things that you shouldn't be doing. And with that said, all praise to our Lord, the Lord of the worlds. Peace be upon you.